Have you ever considered the difference between condensers versus ribbon mics for your drum overheads? Well, today we're going to be exploring some of those differences and highlight that they may not be as substantial as you think. Let's get into it. Let's start by looking at the differences between the two microphones. This is a Audio Technica AT4040. It has a cardioid pickup pattern, which means it picks up sound mostly from the front and has decent rear rejection. This is a Cascade fathead ribbon microphone, and it has a figure 8 pattern, which means it picks up sound equally from the front and the back, but it has really good side rejection. The pickup patterns are important because they attribute a lot of the characteristics to those microphones besides their inherent frequency response. So today I'd like to run a little experiment where we record the same drum pattern on the kit behind me with the condensers and the ribbons, and then we EQ match them afterwards to adjust for any frequency response differences between the two microphones and see what other artifacts differ between them. Let's get into it. First, you'll hear a playthrough with the condenser microphones followed by the ribbon microphones. You're just hearing the overhead mics and there is no processing applied to these recordings. Okay, so now we're in Logic Pro, and we've got the condenser recording on the left and the ribbon recording on the right. And so now what I want to do is a little experiment, basically to eliminate frequency response from the differences between these two microphones, so we can purely analyze all the other attributes of these microphones, so their dynamic response, any frequency limitations, or differences in the polar pattern, and the acoustic effect that has on the microphone. For instance, reverb. Just a quick note on the capture setup for these two recordings. So basically I gain matched in the RME UFX2 as close as possible, and then I've also normalized the recordings to make sure that the volumes are as close as possible. That will eliminate volume from any differences that you hear between the two microphones. So basically the setup here is the two overhead channels are going to a bus. There's no processing on any of these tracks. So now let's open a match EQ. Basically what match EQ does, for those of you that don't know, is it listens to the two tracks, then it creates a match EQ curve to mimic the frequency response of the first track to be applied to the second track. So we'll start off by clicking learn and play the condenser track. Awesome, and then we'll click learn on the reference track and play the ribbon track reference. Fantastic, so now the Match EQ app has listened to those two tracks and we just click match, and awesome, it's generated a EQ curve that when applied to the condenser track will make it sound as close as possible to the ribbon mic track. So now let's listen to both of those. The condenser track with the EQ curve applied, and then the ribbon track without the EQ curve applied, and they should sound very, very close. Let's have a listen. So in my opinion, those recordings are almost identical once EQ adjusted. The ribbons and condensers have very few differences between them. I'm interested to hear your thoughts, please leave them in the comments below. If I were to comment my opinion, I'd say that the condensers had a touch drier sound, and that's because the ribbon microphones are picking up sounds reflecting off the ceiling, so naturally they're going to capture a bit more of the room reverb. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this experiment and hope you learned something from it. Cheers.